Hello and welcome to my thesis presentation, titled Cyberpower Praxis, a study of ways to improve understanding and governance in the cyber domain. My name is Benjamin Knox. I took my PhD at the Faculty of Information Technology and Electrical Engineering, the Department of Information Security and Communication Technology at NTNU Gjøvik. And my main supervisor was Professor Socrates Katsikas. My presentation will have the following structure. The introduction will cover the wider and specific contexts of this thesis, as well as introducing the overarching research question and explaining why this research is important. The background will cover 9 key areas that frame the research and also give an insight into current research related to this topic. The method will cover the type of study I have conducted, and I will then present each paper included in this thesis with a brief description and highlight the key findings. The discussion will highlight what these results actually mean in relation to the field, and lastly, the conclusion will cover the main contributions of the thesis, as well as look at future work. Deterring threats and reducing an adversary's attack surface in the cyber domain is complex and requires multiple levels of control. One such level is the human cyber operator. From a military perspective, any performance advantage cyber operators can gain should be exploited. One approach is to develop the cognitive competencies that support better understanding and governance capabilities among novice-level cyber operators. The term understand relates to the ability to discover causal and associative relationships and the ability to explain these processes and situations. In this thesis, the term governance refers to the way cyber operators attempt to impose a general framework of order and steer powerful effects through cyberspace by piloting their own cognitive processes, or as Plato posited, to be one's own master. In 2009, Kuehl et al. Saw cyberpower as the capacity to use cyberspace to create advantage and influence events. In line with this definition, this doctoral thesis defines cyberpower as the capacity to influence tangible and intangible assets through digital means. The way this capacity is applied by cyber operators is understood as praxis, the use of theory in a practical way. Consequently, the art of cyberpower praxis is the way an individual accurately applies the theory, lessons and skills required to effectively conduct operations in cyberspace. This thesis aims to show that achieving good cyberpower praxis at cyber operator level is reliant upon education and training processes designed to further understanding and allow governance to develop as an individual skill for achieving better performance. The specific research question I set out to answer was to identify approaches to support performance among novice cyber operators. This research is important as it can add valuable content to the development of career structures, guidelines for recruiting and selection, education and training. In the cyber domain, these are all areas that lack the maturity levels of other military domains. The research articles in this thesis are a necessary step in furthering the study of how we approach building understanding and supporting ways to improve human performance in the cyber domain. This is necessary in order to better control the power phenomena that emerge and emanate from it. Cyber operators must deal with multiple competing task profiles. This increases cognitive demands. These demands are further compounded when complex events in cyberspace are revealed and have complex physical world impacts with strategic implications for own, friendly, and/or enemy actors. In this context, the objective of this research was to highlight that greater understanding and the ability to manage multiple simultaneous and often competing interactions is key to performance in the cyber domain. This thesis aims to reveal ways to advance cognitive strategies and release the performance potential relating to self-governance. The role and responsibilities of cyber operators means their behaviors should be characterized by a clear understanding of the operation and the operating environment, the strategic goal and the tactical frames. The ability to deploy the appropriate skills, knowledge and experience and judgment, unafraid to think independently, willing to question assumptions and established views, and be part of a supportive decision-making environment. In previous work, my colleagues and I developed a theoretical framework for cognitive science in military cyberspace operations, called the hybrid space. This interdisciplinary contribution formed the foundation for this thesis. The article discussed the human as the interface between cyberspace and the physical domain, and the cognitive challenges this represents in a military context. A cyber operator may be expected to work in a highly collaborative way across domains, with operators from other disciplines, across nationalities, and outside traditional hierarchies. This illustrates the vertical axis on the hybrid space and the shift to a more fluid, adaptive approach to command structures. As General Stanley McChrystal noted in his 2016 book Team of Teams, challenges to power relations and organizational norms call for adaptive approaches. Seeing cyberspace operations in their wider context is a responsibility of the cyber operator. They are required to appreciate physical world impacts and the consequence of actions, inactions, or incorrect attribution. The cyber operator should therefore be a resilient soldier with a good understanding of the tactical situation and the overall operational context outside of cyberspace. Thinking, deciding, and acting in highly complex technical operations with potentially strategic and global implications is standard procedure. This translates to an appreciation for the diminishing distinction between the cyber domain and the physical domain, the horizontal axis of the hybrid space, regarding understanding how operations in cyberspace fit into military operations. Reflecting on the roles and responsibilities, a cyber operator has to know her own strengths and weaknesses, i.e. self-awareness, and be able to answer the question, am I achieving the objective of this activity, i.e. self-regulation? These, as well as awareness and understanding of other key decision makers, are metacognitive skills. Metacognitive skills are what cognitive agility is reliant upon, the ability to orientate thinking effectively and appropriately to meet objectives with situational constraints. I will now present 9 key background areas that have framed this research. Cyberspace enables the delivery of cyber power effects to wherever an actor, whether it's a state, institution, or individual, has needs and goals. From a military perspective, cyber power effects can impose limitations on an opponent as a stabilizing effect, or it can provide the decisive blow through a cyberspace operation. Responding to the growing influence of cyber power effects involves developing techniques and methods to counter the threats, as well as address and mitigate known and unknown vulnerabilities. It has been written that defense against cyber power should not be passive, as it requires a wide range of defensive actions transformed into a proactive attitude. In July 2016, NATO, allied heads of state and government agreed to declare cyberspace a domain of operations. Digitization and the expansion of cyberspace means conflict can take place anywhere, anytime, by any actor with a motivation at greater speed, as well as covertly, with populations as the non-kinetic target. Consequently, the cyberspace domain presents profound challenges for how militaries prepare and counter threats, as national defense no longer rests with the government and the state military apparatus. NATO's cyber defense pledge specifies education as part of a national defense effort. The Norwegian Defence Cyber Academy offers a holistic learning environment where civilian academics and military teachers work in collaboration. This collective approach allows for cadet exposure to stimulating, overlapping and diverse perspectives. With the right cognitive competencies, cyber cadets can adapt rapidly after graduation to their chosen operating environment and perform. However, the right curriculum or education model for cyber military personnel is debatable. Methods that are founded in cognitive engineering and techniques known to accelerate learning inspired this thesis. Significantly, they encourage the applied interventions attempting to develop adaptive skills within the framework of the existing curriculum at the Norwegian Defence Cyber Academy. Future battlefields and hybrid warfare requires new skill sets characterized by new and better cognitive competencies. Traditional military leadership norms relating to command, control, and obedience can restrict performance potential as they micromanage, overspecify, and create knowledge barriers. This thesis argues for approaches to develop future cyber operators and cyber leaders with the skills and vision to achieve objectives in spite of future demands from an increasingly volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous operating environment. If novice cyber operators can improve their understanding of their psychological traits that influence their behaviors and decision-making, i.e., if they engage in processes that teach them to monitor and control their learning, then in line with earlier research, they may become more adaptable. For cyber operators to avoid psychological traps that can lead to, for example, communication errors, they should have well-developed self-governance. This requires educating and training cognitive capacities that are known to support performance. Metacognitive skills support personal agency, the ability to self-govern and allow for greater freedom to exercise options and adapt one's own behaviors. Metacognitive experiences are feelings and cognitions that arise during the situation and include judgments, emotion regulation strategies, and self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is supported by metacognitive skills and can be thought of as beliefs about one's own capabilities to learn or perform. Exercising metacognitive skills builds authentic real-world knowledge through the process of assessment, evaluation, planning, application, monitoring, and reflection. This can be of particular use when dealing with cyberpower effects. What a slow education approach offers is an alternative to the standardized, content-focused, and institutionally centered information delivery method. Evidence has shown that constructivist pedagogical approaches, grounded in metacognitive strategies such as reflective practice and self-regulation, can improve performance. One approach that has proven highly successful for proficiency development is mentoring. Mentoring can support learning processes as it stimulates reflection on behavior, dealing with received feedback, and how to apply learning strategies. When a learner, supported by an expert mentor, monitors, debugs, and evaluates what is learned, then metacognition develops. Evidence from pedagogical research indicates a clear association between expert mentoring and academic performance, self-regulatory skills, satisfaction levels, and lower stress and anxiety levels. Lastly, cognitive agility can be understood as an individual's metacognitive strategy proficiency to meet objectives with situational constraints. Operations where the task characteristics require effective coordination between multiple agents and asset types, including human, technical, tangible, and intangible, to build understanding will likely benefit from self-governing individuals with openness, flexibility, and adaptability. These are the psychological characteristics of cognitive agility. This doctoral research took a mixed methods approach. The benefits of using differing approaches for each paper was to support the inclusion of different theoretical designs to give a holistic picture of the studied phenomena. It required that I had an overview understanding and an in-depth focus of not only the domain being studied, in this case the cyberspace domain, but also of the domains that are related and integrated within the new domain, i.e. military structures and human factors in performance. Integrating qualitative and quantitative data can support triangulation to converge or corroborate findings from differing perspectives. Also, as was the case in this research, a developmental, iterative process helped develop new methods for data collection that enabled wide coverage of the research question. It also initiated the discoveries and contradictions and inconsistencies within the datasets, which led to hypothesis reformulation and opening new avenues for inquiry. In 2010, Tracy specified a number of focus areas pertaining to validity of qualitative research. The produced and presented research in this study adheres closely to these areas. The topic of research is worthy due to the relative novelty of studying human factors in this field. Multiple perspectives provided rigor, and researcher sincerity and credibility was continually monitored to check for bias and self-reflexivity. Along with ensuring the outcomes resonated and had meaningful coherence to a broad audience, the ethical aspect of this research was constantly evaluated, especially considering my position as an employee at the Norwegian Defence Cyber Academy. Validity of quantitative data was achieved by using behavioral measurement instruments that have previously undergone stringent validation procedures in other domains. A natural setting was chosen over more standardized, experimental, laboratory-controlled settings to account for the Norwegian Defence Cyber Academy's interest in applied knowledge. For further generalizations, more fundamental research should follow up on underlying causal relationships contributing to the naturalistic behavior investigated in this thesis. Attempts were made to reduce intrusiveness when gathering data, and participation was always by consent. For the first qualitative study, 7 key respondents were identified so the researcher could secure subjective information from people who know within operational environments. This selective visibility can be a limitation due to bias and value-laden data. The participants for the quantitative studies were final year cyber cadets at the Defence Cyber Academy. Each cohort consists of a maximum of 40 cadets, meaning this was the maximum available population for research. The cadets are by circumstance and design a very homogeneous group. A highly demanding selection process, then living, studying and training together for 3 years at a military academy tends to have this effect. This limits the possibility to generalize anything to a wider population beyond the defence cyber cadets. The results can therefore be seen as highly ecologically valid and resembling this population, while further generalizations would require further research. I will now proceed to give an overview of the 7 studies in this thesis and highlight the most significant findings from each. Military and civilian defensive cyberspace operations share many of the same characteristics as they seek the same outcome: to counter and limit the negative effects of cyberpower, preserve the ability to use the defended cyberspace, and ensure the right cyberspace conditions enabling own mission assurance. For this reason, the institutions chosen for the first study were political, military, economic, social, informational, infrastructure, and diplomatic. The purpose of the study was to open space for discussions regarding the extent in which the growing phenomenon of cyberpower impacts on institutional development in Norway. For analysis, data was categorized into 5 thematic areas: cyber governance, holistic approach, multi-staker model, new approaches, and behavior of interested parties. The research findings reflected an uncertain institutional landscape, as a digital dependency versus digital vulnerability paradox shapes values, rules, and norms across instruments of power. This suggests that organizations are in a survival mode that is blocking collaboration, as national governance systems, human capacity, and cyberpower effects all lack synergy. The key findings for the direction of this thesis was the research revealed the need for investment in building the human factor skills and capacities necessary for managing the effects of cyberpower. Ensuring that these factors of self-governance behavior contribute to safe and efficient communication led to the second study. This study aimed to look at a way to prevent communication failures arising from individual differences driven by factors such as hierarchy, bias, or effort. asking the question, can cognitive engineering be applied to communication activities in the cyber domain to improve performance? When co-constructing a shared mental model, communication partners should apply techniques to enhance situational awareness. Information processing resources such as working memory, cognitive flexibility, metacognitive awareness, and perspective taking. The hybrid space framework allows for the introduction of applied cognitive science as an approach to cyberspace domain education. With a tailored pedagogic approach that builds cognitive capacities, such as metacognitive awareness, perspective taking, and adaptability, it is possible to train dyadic social interaction and communication between actors located in different areas of the hybrid space, across hierarchies, or in varying technical specializations. In other domains, metacognitive awareness and self-regulation have been shown to be important factors in performance. Paper 3 attempted to investigate these factors as a potential index for evaluating individual cognitive performance during a cyber defense exercise, with the use of the hybrid space conceptual framework. Data for this paper was gathered via 2 psychological instruments completed before the exercise began. Cadets completed the metacognitive awareness inventory and the self-regulation questionnaire. For one day, they plotted their subjective cognitive foci in the hybrid space via self-report with pen and paper. A total of 31 cadets participated, plotting their foci every hour from 8 in the morning until 8 in the evening. The results showed that metacognitive strategies could explain hybrid space performance outcomes and support the development of a cognitive agility index for cyber operators. For example, total distance traveled in the hybrid space was predicted by metacognitive debugging strategies. These are defined as regulation of cognition used to correct comprehension and performance errors, as well as total self-regulation score. Together, these factors explained 18% of hybrid space distance traveled movements. Evaluation as a metacognitive regulatory behavior predicted x-axis movements, and triggering behaviors, searching for solutions, and implementing new strategies were associated more with quadrant changes. Y-axis movements could not be explained by metacognitive awareness or self-regulatory processes. Considering that metacognitive ability is trainable, the results of this experiment clearly indicate, based on our operationalizations, techniques to improve performance in a complex cyber defense operational environment. Building on these initial findings, Paper 4 introduces the Hybrid Space app. This application was designed and applied for collecting, visualizing, and analyzing individual cognitive focus data when military cyber cadets were engaged in a 4-day cyber defense exercise at the Norwegian Defence Cyber Academy. In real-time analysis, this gives mentors, trainers, and leaders access to individual and team cognitive focus, levels of control, and effort. The figure on the right is a snapshot of one participant's cognitive maneuver over the 4-day period, as well as that individual's reported feeling of control and effort at the time of marking their cognitive location. Aggregated with ex-con knowledge of scenario developments and task requirements, this data can shed light on how participants cognitively maneuver and focus to make sense of information emerging from cyber and physical domains. In the context of education and training, the app can give insight into so far unexplored cognitive dynamics on individual and group level performance. The next study took the data collected from the Hybrid Space app, as well as data from 3 cognitive process questionnaires, and looked at how slow education approach has the potential to improve cognitive performance among novice military cyber cadets. Slow techniques, based on the principle of metacognitive instruction, metacognitive activities, and prolonged periods of training, were applied to 37 cyber cadets during a 3-year bachelor program at the Defence Cyber Academy. By implementing slow approaches, this applied research hoped to see associations between the specific cognitive agility indices, as reported in Paper 3, such as metacognition, self-regulation, perseverative thinking during a CDX. The intended outcome was to support cyber operators develop thinking skills to regulate behavior. The findings from this study showed that reflective pondering, self-regulation, and metacognition, as a declarative knowledge, were all associated with hybrid space movements. Although reflective pondering and self-regulation were significant variables that influenced hybrid space movements for distance travelled and x-axis movements. Self-regulation was the only significant predictor for distance travelled, x-axis, and y-axis movements. It has been shown that alternative pedagogies can improve learners' cognitive repertoire through feedback, simulation, and training. Self-regulation is categorized as a metacognitive skill. It is therefore likely that supporting metacognitive skill development can lead to better cognitive agility. Providing an environment that promotes personal growth and efficacy can protect against factors that may cause learners to drop out of their studies. Within cybersecurity, prevalence of female professionals has risen from 11% in 2013 to 20% in 2019, but there is still a disparity and the need for higher numbers of females. Retention also needs to be understood better. The sixth study in this thesis assessed factors in promoting female student retention in the educational setting of the Norwegian Defence Cyber Academy. This was done by profiling female cyber cadets to see if any differences in personality, cognitions, and behaviour strategies exist between male and female cadets, and controlled with age and gender matched non-technical students from a neighbouring university. Some findings showed that female cadets could be at risk of dropping out due to factors such as anxiety, maladaptive emotion regulation strategies, as well as significantly less self-efficacy than all other groups tested. Anxiety, low self-efficacy, and maladaptive emotion regulation styles are all risk factors in academic underperformance. However, these factors did not seem to contribute to females dropping out of the Norwegian Defence Cyber Academy. This may be due to certain key qualitative institutional factors and approaches that promote stronger self-governance. Factors such as mentoring, peer support, role models, and a positive culture of high-performing female cadets mean the Norwegian Defence Cyber Academy provides novel insights on female performance in this technological field. A goal of the project was developing the function of understanding for better governance of cyber power effects. Paper 7 ties together the learning and the outcomes of the applied approach and interventions taken to improve cyber cadet performance. A concept was developed and implemented that involved the independent and collaborative production and analysis of cyber defense retrospective timelines. The timelines were completed at different stages in a daily training cycle with the purpose of increasing the cadets' levels of self and domain understanding. This occurs as the timelines facilitate educational benefits based on insight, accurate self-perception, motivation, and decreased team workload. When cyber cadets and highly proficient mentors work on daily retrospective timelines that differentiate between performance-relevant hard and soft skills, it leads progressively towards an alignment of team, individual, and the expert mentor's judgment of performance. The outcome for cadets completing this intervention can be improved self-reflection for more accurate measurement and monitoring of own and cyber team performance relative to actual performance or learning rate. Primarily studying the challenge of supporting better cyber power praxis from the perspective of educating military cyberspace personnel and answering the question, identifying approaches to support performance among novice cyber operators. This thesis is a significant contribution to ensuring what was earlier termed cognitive readiness. Investing in processes that can support the cognitive readiness skills necessary for creating new knowledge based upon advanced understanding means governance at a human behavioral level can support how cyber power effects are managed. It also shows that metacognitive skill development is a key contributor to achieving a holistic approach to managing the positive and negative effects of cyber power. This aligns with contemporary research by Hutton and Taylor in 2019 that says being cognitively agile means applying cognitive flexibility and adaptive expertise to meet the demands of a situation generated by an agile and/or intelligent adversary. This means that teachers, instructors, exercise planners, and mentors would benefit from improved understanding relating to cognitive flexibility and adaptive expertise as enabling factors for general thinking and decision making. Invariably, but often unknowingly, faculty members have strong metacognitive skills and assume that learners either have them or will naturally develop them over time. Teachers should not overestimate their students' metacognitive skills. They should also not underestimate the need for thoughtful instruction in order to teach and reinforce these skills. This research affords the reader the opportunity to change fixed mindsets, revealing how human factors such as understanding and self-governance as functions of performance can be facilitated by alternative educational processes that can build domain cognizance. One such alternative approach is slow education. This is an approach that relies upon methods of self-reflective practice to allow for progress evaluation and adaptation where necessary, mentoring as dynamic assessment, and applied learning to develop adaptability and cognitive flexibility in complex situations. To develop cognitive agility requires approaches to improving all aspects of cognitive work. For this reason, educators should be guided in the process of A. Understanding what cognitive work entails, B. The critical role they play in helping students develop metacognitive skills, and C. Support educators to rethink their subject and content to identify opportunities for interventions that can improve cadets' cognitive agility. Significant lessons can be taken from the aforementioned contributions and applied by institutions educating as well as managing the effects of cyberpower. By identifying approaches to support performance among novice cyber operators, this thesis helps leverage positive effects and mitigate the negative effects of cyberpower by focusing on supporting human factor skills. This research highlights the role metacognitive development has in improving domain cognizance, i.e., the knowledge and awareness needed to build understanding and the regulatory skills for better governance of self. This thesis makes a case for metacognition being taught through alternative pedagogies, creating a teaching and learning environment that includes protective factors to reduce for the risk of learners dropping out, and applies cognitive engineering-inspired approaches to reduce the likelihood of communication failure. When metacognition can be measured as an approach to support better cyberpower praxis, this may enable individuals to be more aware of their cognitive processes and appropriateness and their ability to direct or readjust them. The implication, then, is the importance of cognitive agility as an outcome of understanding, defined as domain cognizance, and governance of self, for managing the demands of cyberpower. This reasoning is based upon the psychological characteristics of cognitive agility being openness to alternatives, flexibility to respond with alternative solutions, ability to adapt attentional focus between wide and narrow perspectives. There is greater reach and potential impact of this thesis. The need to invest in developing the technical and social skills of learners includes employees within institutions who are interfacing with digital effects. This thesis highlights the potential applicability of this research to support institutional development in wider populations. This can happen through the introduction of suggested techniques that are known to enhance performance and applying them in a cyber operator education and training to support understanding and governance capabilities. However, as noted earlier, before quantifiable cause and effect performance improvement can be claimed and generalized to wider populations, further research will be necessary. Validating the orientate, locate, and bridge model in Paper 2 can lead to developing a standardized way to assess this OLB through observations, self-assessment, and scenarios with virtual agents. An OLB assessment tool can have the purpose of supporting aptitude testing for potential suitability for specific roles in a cyber workforce. This research lacks the empirical data to judge whether the hybrid space app measures cognitive agility or, in fact, instability. The former is voluntary and under control, and the latter is movement due to uncontrolled internal or external effects. An investigation to resolve if movement is good, as suggested theoretically and explained in this thesis, or is it bad, means attempting to identify the causal relationship between cognitive agility in the hybrid space and performance indicators. It may also require moving beyond the performance-related proxy used thus far to disentangling voluntary hybrid space movement from involuntary. It has been reported that little is known about what makes a good mentor in a modern socio-technical context. Qualifying to be a mentor in an educational cyberspace domain context goes beyond having high technological expertise. It means having a broader skill set that is capable of developing a learner's core human factors. Further research is needed to learn and develop a methodology for identifying the right mentors and how to use them in this domain to achieve goals in an efficient and appropriate way. Finally, reflecting on the process of investigating and learning how performance can be improved among cyber cadets who will be charged with managing the effects of cyberpower highlights the cross-disciplined collaborations embraced and leveraged throughout this project. Improved proficiency in the cyberspace domain cannot be pursued from one singular field of view. It requires multiple perspectives and ones that go beyond investing in more technology. Here is a list of the references used to put together this presentation. And this concludes my presentation. So all that's left to say is thank you for listening, and thank you to this group of very important people who have helped me over the years, and to the institutions also that have helped me get to this stage of my PhD.